How involved are you in Fairmount post-acquisition, post-transaction?
That's a great question. It really depends. One of the nice things about being an investment banker is you develop a really deep relationship with your client. You go through a 9-month process. You are their advisor, you are their counselor, and you develop friendships. That's one of the things that I love about doing these deals is that you get to know a really interesting business and a really interesting founder, and you're able to create wealth, meaningful wealth for them. That's just like a really good feeling. And so if a company sells to a strategic, right? So there's two flavors of M&A that we typically see at Fairmount. So one flavor is you sell to a strategic, your company gets absorbed, and they integrate you, and that's kind of the end of it. Maybe you've got a product name or something like that, but you basically get absorbed by the bigger entity. We'll stay in touch with those founders, and we may stay in touch with people who are a key part of that process. For companies that get sold to private equity, which is the other flavor, we will continue to try and add value because those companies, private equity has a holding period of, call it traditionally 3 to 5 years, where buy a company, grow it up, sell it. We typically get involved with companies early before they ever sell. What we're trying to do is meet a company a year to 2 years before they ever think about an exit so that we can help guide them and provide support. Similarly, for a company that's been acquired by PE, we don't stop returning their calls once the deal happens. Sometimes they'll say, hey, I've got an issue with my board. Can you help me think about how to deal with it? Yes, we can. Can you help us with our financial modeling? Yeah, sure, happy to do that. We want to continue to support companies. We think about the life cycle of a company. We want to add value when they're early, help them when they're ready to raise money, help them when they're ready to exit. If it's an exit to PE, help them when they're ready to do the next exit.
That makes sense. And what you were talking about with the strategic acquisitions, what I was hearing is sort of these bolt-on or tuck-in deals.
Yeah, that's right. So a PE would call that a bolt-on or a tuck-in. A big strategic would just say, yeah, we're just going to buy it and absorb it. But that's exactly right. So big PE-backed company has a product gap, and they are looking to, a good example is the buy side that I mentioned earlier. They've got a product gap. So you find a company that you think can fill the product gap, and that becomes the rationale for your acquisition. So you're bringing in a new organization to help fill many times a technical gap within the acquiring company.
And this has been a really interesting piece of this for us as well, because I think bringing this back to the whole hidden chasm concept, that's where you can really run into a lot of trouble. Have you seen the stat, actually, I read about the last week or so, I think it was the Harvard Business Review put out that between 70 and 90% of M&A is considered a failure, which kind of blows my mind. I'm also very curious.
Yeah, our stats are much higher.
Oh, really? Well, I mean, that's a good question. Like, what does failure mean in your mind post-acquisition?
That's a good question.
You could also flip it and say, what are the key conditions of success?
There you go. Yeah, you can get positive about it.
That's a good question. So when we think about an acquisition, there's part of the rationale that you lead with is synergies. There may be cost synergies related to duplicate personnel, duplicate systems. And we can come back to duplicate systems. Are they really duplicate? So there's cost synergies related to personnel. And then there may be sales synergies, revenue synergies related to the ability to cross-sell a product. So when it works, that synergy story holds, and you have a situation where 1 + 1 = 5. We're now selling a lot more. The target's selling a lot more. The acquiring company is selling a lot more. The product sets go together really well. They fit nicely with each other. You're able to achieve some cost synergies on the back end. And so what's happening is that the acquisition is paying for itself. So is the acquisition paying for itself? If it is, then that's a success. What can go wrong is you acquire a company that you have a theory that your buyers are going to want to buy that product, but they don't. And maybe it's because you're an enterprise buyer and you acquire an SMB focused business and your salespeople can't sell that.
Yeah.
to SMB. And the SMB guys, the SMB salespeople don't know how to sell enterprise. SMB is very high velocity, a lot of churn. Enterprise is very long sales cycles, hopefully stickier. So even that, if you have a product that at face value might make a lot of sense together, if it's built for a particular company, or if the focus of the target and the acquirer is at odds in terms of who their ICP is, their ideal customer profile, that can create a lot of problems.